I am a fertility doctor, board certified reproductive endocrinologist, which means I did train first in OBGYN and then specialized in reproductive endocrinology. And basically what I do every day is I make test tube babies. So, and that's where you guys come into play, because in order for guys to have a baby, you have the sperm, we need the uterus, and we need the egg. So what we're doing is we're getting a uterus, a gestational carrier, or gestational surrogate, and then we're getting donor eggs, and then we're getting your sperm, either both of you separately or together or sequentially, and those are all different things that we have to talk about. So the reason, one of the basic reasons why we talk about gestational surrogacy versus traditional surrogacy, gestational surrogacy plus donor eggs plus traditional surrogacy, because that is a huge difference in terms of you guys are trying to have a baby with the two of you that you're going to parent, that you're going to have custody of, and you cannot legally have a woman give her egg and carry the baby and then enforce any kind of agreement where she basically then she's giving her baby up. So, but if you have a carrier and you have an egg donor and your sperm and you do all the paperwork ahead of time, legal representation, you've done your homework, then you can really truly legally be the parents of the child. And so that's the reason why we do this whole just separate person provides the uterus, separate person provides the egg, and then the sperm. The big trend these days that's really exciting in medicine is the new vitrification technology. Have you guys heard about vitrification? Vitrification is this cool new process of freezing, and it's completely and totally revolutionized egg freezing very recently. So much so that egg freezing was, until October 2012, considered by the American Society for Reproductive Medicine to be experimental. And now they've said the vitrification method of freezing has changed the numbers so much that if you're a good program with experience, your frozen egg pregnancy rates can be almost the same as your fresh egg pregnancy rates. And we originally worked in egg freezing. We're very excited because young women that have cancer, that were single and were going through chemotherapy, now have a chance to freeze their eggs before chemotherapy and radiation. And we didn't realize it, but it's started to become really, really helpful in third-party reproduction. So in my gay couples that are trying to have a baby, they are coordinating multiple things. And you guys that have been here at this conference, you know that there's a lot of coordination, a lot of logistics involved. There's the two of you, there's your carrier, there's the carrier's husband, there's the donor, potentially the donor's partner as well. You're coordinating a lot of people. Every single person has legal representation, consent forms, testing, medical screening, psychological, all of those kinds of things have to come together. And we found for our gay couples that have the most people to coordinate, really, compared to anybody else, that the frozen egg thing has been really, really helpful to us. We have a frozen egg bank, and they can just go online, and if they like one of the profiles, you can just order the eggs and have them FedExed, and they can sit there while we evaluate your sperm and you get the carrier evaluated. And this is another really common question: which step do I do first? And the honest answer is there's no set protocol, because you have so many pieces that you have to put into place. You are kind of like juggling a lot of balls at once. And we prefer that you start everybody on their little pathway. You have a conversation with the lawyer, and you start them working on the legal aspects in the surrogacy agency. But we can be a coordinator. Like we do think that, obviously we have a personal bias, but we also try to feel like if you stop to the IVF program first, and you have an experienced IVF program where you have a whole team of professionals that do this all the time, that we can be kind of your umbrella or your core go-to center, where we can say, okay, here's a couple lawyers to talk to, here's an agency to talk to, These are your choices of donors. We can try to make it as simple and as one-stop as we possibly can, even though we're not lawyers or a surrogacy agency. So because we've worked with all these people and we kind of know their different personalities, the way they work, and hopefully can coordinate that for you, make recommendations, and help keep the process coordinated and together. So when you come back to me and you say, well, our lawyer said this and this and this, what do you think about that? We'll have opinions for you, we'll have direction for you, we'll have advice for you about those kinds of things. So no, there's no particular order, but we do feel like we can be kind of a central clearinghouse in addition to just, we actually make the baby. So there's a few, so I want you to know about egg freezing technology. I want you to know about the vitrification, because it's something that's really big in terms of, I don't know if you saw Facebook and Apple now paying for egg freezing for young women as part of their benefits. That's because of vitrification, because it's so successful, this technology, and I think it's actually going to be really, really helpful in gay couples with their third-party parenting endeavors, because it's going to simplify things for you. I have a couple that needs gestational carrier and needs donor egg, and they live in China, and they travel all over the world all the time, and they have a donor that they love that's here in New Jersey, and the donor they love is available now, but then will not be available for 6 months in the first half of 2015 because she has other obligations. And they were really, really sad that they couldn't use her because I couldn't get the sperm here in time, for the cycle. But she's, reviewed it with the lab. She's a great donor. We've seen her eggs before. We're going to freeze her eggs, and then they're going to get the donor that they want. And whenever I get the sperm, I'll get the sperm, and then, we'll coordinate everything together. The sperm will be frozen. Frozen or fresh sperm makes no difference for success rates. And then so when we get the carrier, we will thaw the eggs, put it together with the sperm, make the embryos, and put the embryos in. You had a question?
Yeah, this question, what is the success rate in frozen eggs versus fresh eggs?
So with in the donor egg population, so that's women 21 to 32 years old who have been screened, who have a normal FSH, normal AMH, anti-malarial hormone, it's the same in our program. Now, I will tell you the take-home baby rate, we have 30 to 40 live births, ongoing pregnancies with frozen eggs, and hundreds of live births from fresh eggs, but it's the same per single embryo transfer. One nice blastocyst transfer, we're seeing 50 to 60% take-home from the frozen eggs. So we've been incredibly pleased, and that's like a huge change from just a couple of years ago. So it really has completely and totally changed the field, and I think it's going to make a huge difference in third-party reproduction, and people are not talking about it that much yet because it's just, it's so new. So we definitely want you guys to know about that. Then, yes?
Could you just add our own donors, because we have, in terms of what we can supply, we have own donors, frozen eggs, that what we can give as a center. Can you share that part?
Oh, that we have fresh donors that we coordinate. We have the frozen egg donation, and then we also work with a bunch of donor egg agencies that there are hundreds of donor egg agencies out there. And if a donor egg agency doesn't have experience and doesn't know what they're doing, that you can end up spending a lot of money and going through a bunch of donors that can get rejected. So you need a donor agencies typically don't do all the medical screening, but if they're experienced and they know what they're doing and they counsel the donors appropriately, then your chance that using that agency that you'll have your donor rejected is very low. Whereas an inexperienced agency, the rejection rate can be quite high. It's like if you just put an ad in the paper, hey, you want $8,000 so you can be my egg donor, you get a lot of responses because everybody wants $8,000, but nobody really knows about the egg donation part. So you definitely, the experience of the agency when you're, for the donors is very, very important. Yes?
I have two questions.
Yes.
One is, the surrogate carriers that you work with, do they come from New Jersey or are they coming from all over?
They're coming from all over.
And so how much time do they need to spend with
your
you?
lawyer needs to help you decide what are the best places your carrier should come from. Because in New Jersey, it used to be that if the baby came out of your vagina, that is your baby legally. And it used to be like that in all the states. And now everything is changing, and I'm telling you, it changes like every week. Just like marriage equality changes every week. You guys are like, oh, now what's the latest state that that they allow, like, you know, that we have gay marriage is legal, and then oh, next week somebody decided it's not legal. You know, so that is changing. And whether you're single, you have a civil union, whether you're married, do you want a pre-birth order? Do you want a second parent adoption? Do you want to do both? All of those things play into where should your carrier deliver. And you need a really, you know, really good, savvy lawyer.
Does a surrogate carrier come? How much does your fertility center?
They just
provide?
email us that, you know, the carrier monitoring is not so hard.
So once the implantation is successful, the pregnancy
Yeah,
is.
carrier monitoring is not so hard, so we can monitor, we just do things by email, and then we bring them in like maybe a day before, if everything's, we do bring them here in person for in-person screening. They have to be in here. You guys have to meet them in person. The psychologist wants to meet the carrier and her husband separately, you separately, and then see you guys together to make sure like that it's gonna go okay. And then she'll do a little bit of medical screening with us. But then after that, everything can be done remotely, and then she can fly in like the day before, do a quick scan. She's already on the drugs. We know all her levels. We know what you know, you can, the digital films that you can see usually are just as good as everything else.
And so when it comes to the gestational period health insurance, you haven't had problems with certain states in terms of, because you're building.
That's another thing that you have to be aware of, and with Obamacare, it is changing all the time, and a lot of these carriers, they are finding every single day new ways to say no. And one of the ways they say no is, oh, she's not keeping the baby, we're not covering her pregnancy. So that's another thing that the lawyers have to help you with. Who's covering all those medical expenses? What's going on with the insurance? And you need to work out the insurance. You have to have a surrogacy friendly obstetrician, and so there are definitely a lot of things to think about. The other technology that I want you guys to be aware of that's really taking off now, not specifically third party, but everybody doing assisted reproduction should know about it, is the genetic testing. So we can, Barnabas happens to be one of the world leaders in genetic testing, so I always talk about it, where we can do basically like a mini amniocentesis on the embryo. So we check for Down syndrome, we do check for sex, and a lot of people do ask about sex selection. In general, ACOG and ASRM say, we don't really recommend sex selection because we worry about sex bias. We know that gay couples often have a lot of concerns about the sex of the child, and those are all things that the psychologist will talk with you about. But it is definitely, that's part of the testing, is when you test embryo genetically, you are checking for the sex as well. So potentially you could choose the sex, but potentially you could harm your cycle if, like, let's say you want a boy and the girl embryo looks much better and is much more likely to make a pregnancy. So those are things you should talk about with your doctor if you want to think about it. And there's pros and cons, and we're not making that sex. We're making everybody, and then you guys have, if you choose one, that means you're also leaving somebody behind as well. So, stuff that you have to think about. But that technology is there, it's quite accurate, not quite as accurate as amniocentesis, but it's kind of amazing, like the kinds of things that we can do these days. So.
And so I'm just after the implantation and pregnancy going ahead, then basically care is transferred to wherever the gestation carrier.
Exactly. So we tend to watch over the pregnancy, even if the pregnancy is remote, the carrier is in another state. Like we do the transfer, we put her in the plane, send her off, and it's totally safe to do that. Like she can get up and as long, we just want her to drink lots of water on the plane, but and not sit next to anyone with Ebola, so but she can go back, and we monitor really carefully remotely for the first 4 weeks of from the pregnancy test, and if you monitor 4 weeks, then they're 8 weeks pregnant, then they go to the obstetrician. So usually if the carrier is in another state, they're working with an IVF center in that state, and I'm communicating with that IVF center. I want her on estrogen, progesterone, things like that, and they're communicating the lab values and the ultrasounds.